Now, guys, my last video, I talked about Napoleonic battle formations through video games, particularly a game called Muskets of Europe. Now, personally, I thought the video went good as I was recording it. But now I rewatched the video, I realized that the video game's background music was literally just overriding my voice to the full extent. Like, even the subtitles couldn't catch what I was saying. Not to mention, I'm a terrible speaker. So, this video will technically explain the Napoleonic battle formations by, you know, with essentially just a copy of the second video, just minus the ridiculously loud background music. The first formation is the line formation. Now, just so you know, back in the day, soldiers were put in, soldiers marched and fought in very, very, very dense formations. AKA, they fought in, close together, instead of just, spread out as they are today. Because the reason was, since communication was limited to shouting and bugles. And if not everyone could hear it, well, that'd kind of be a problem. Not only that, but if they're in densely packed formations, when they're charging or marching into enemy fire, they'd be able to urge each other on into battle, and they'd know who was to the left of them, to the right of them, and who was behind them, or even just who was in front of them. When confusion sprung out because of, battle smoke, whatever, So, the first formation we got here is the line formation. The line formation, as you can see here, the British are doing it, was normally like a line 2 ranks, 3 ranks deep. It could be 1 rank, I don't know. All I know is it was meant to just maximize firepower in a group. Like, if you just had lines of them, and they all, everyone can shoot. Now, you see, muskets back in the day, the smoothbore ones, were very inaccurate. But if you had them all fire in a volley, you could make them deadlier, because, come on, 100 muskets, one of them's going to hit you. And also, it increases their psychological impact on the battlefield. Not only that, but it also has some advantages against cavalry. And since there's thin lines, when cavalry, when they use round shot, it'll probably only go through half of them. You know what I mean? I mean, not half of them, but I mean it will go through it will go through the thin line. Like, let's just say these two got hit by a cannonball. Since it's round shot, it will just tear through the line, right? So, for example, let's just say it only killed 2. For realistic reasoning. And of course, the fact that it's a densely packed formation where you knew who was to the left of you and who was behind you, and such and such. The next formation that was mentioned in this video was the square formation. Now, the problem during this part of the video was that, first of all, since this is a mobile game that was free, let's just say that square formations weren't really in the game, and I had to build this myself. And they didn't get the memo on how this was supposed to work. The point was that the front ranks, the people on the edges, all these people, they were supposed to have their bayonets pointing outwards, on, these pointing this way, these pointing this way. And the second rank, the people on the back behind them, they were supposed to shoot volleys at cavalry, which was going, at cavalry. Now, just so you know, there's no cavalry in this game. Yeah, I know. We're waiting for that update, if there's going to be an update. But, yeah, the point was that since there, you just had a wall of bayonets pointing out of the square on all sides, so they couldn't be flanked, horses will not run into a wall of spikes. Even if they did, that would be catastrophic. Yeah, so it was good to repel cavalry. But there was a couple problems. I mean, yeah. Um, this, just so you know, the square is stationary. Okay, the square can't really move. Oh, mental note. The command, the drummers, and some of the reserve troops are in the middle. So just so you know, the square is hollow. Yeah, hollow. The problem with infantry squares was that since they were immobile, they were vulnerable to infantry volley fire and cannon fire. Yeah, just so you know. The next formation I'm going to mention is the column. Now, columns, unlike, columns were mainly meant for movement, long lines, and, they were flexible, they could turn, unlike the square, unlike the, lines or squares. I mean, technically, yeah. I mean, they were long, and they were also meant for assault, because, just long lines of these guys just keep charging. I mean, yeah. Now, of course, the column, I know, as you can see, the French weren't used here for the column demonstration out of accident. No, the French used the column a lot. Here was a small demonstration on how the column was supposed to work. As you can see, all these men going here, and then, being turned into cannon fodder, and then, getting blown up by cannons, and, just use your mass supply soldiers to assault on the enemy position, and move flexibly, and, wipe the enemy out. Now, just so you know, since Napoleon used columns a lot, along with lines, he actually made, I think, a manual, something like that, a doctrine, that was supposed to, I think it was called the Order Mixti, that was supposed to, advise how to use columns and lines together in a battle. So, yeah. The next thing that was mentioned in this video was the artillery battery. Now, the artillery battery here, there was no cannons behind, just so you know. It was actually just supposed to be a long line of cannons, but I guess I kind of messed that up. But anyway, the point was you'd concentrate artillery in one place and have them firing at one certain spot, whether it was a weak spot in the enemy formations or just an important, vital area that you would want to that you would want to defeat. And here goes the artillery. Sheesh. Yeah. One thing you got to give this game, they have good death animations. The next thing that was mentioned in this video was the skirmishing screen. Now, in the video, I requested that the viewer pretend that this guy was wearing green and he was a 95th Rifle skirmisher. This was used by the British. It might have been used by other countries, but the only example I know is used by the British. The idea of a skirmishing screen, as you can see, this line that goes out. Skirmishers, they normally didn't make formations. They normally just, ran around, shot at the enemy, did some sharpshooting, harassing the enemy, that kind of thing. Going ahead as a main line infantry and stuff. But, the 95th Rifles, the British sometimes used them to make skirmishing screens. Like, if they wanted to protect a certain area, they didn't want the enemy to go through, Like, for example, if the French were to charge from this hill to try and flank the British, the 95th Rifles, they might have been set up to start a little skirmishing screen to try and, halt, what's the word for it? Distract the French, technically. Just make sure they can't push through. Anyway, that was kind of it for this video. I mean, yeah, I hope you now understand Napoleonic battle tactics properly. And, yeah, I hope you have heard everything I've said without crazy loud background sounds. Trust me, I will not make this mistake again in the future. Goodbye. This way.
should I say this one? Back to this, back to this.